You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Dharma Bum Temple. Those who may be here for the first time, those of you for some reason keep coming back, welcome back. I was answering some questions earlier, and one thing like stuck into my mind that as I was making my offering now just kind of popped in my head again. It's like if I hadn't found Buddhist practice, my life would have been a disaster. And that's so blatantly obvious to me that if this kind of Buddhist path and meditation and Dharma didn't really enter into my world, my life would have been a disaster. And I don't know how else to say that other than that way. Actually, that's not true. I know a lot of ways to say that, but that's why I'm saying it right now. And I think back to when I first started going to the temple in 2003, and I don't know what it was about being there, but I just, at that time in my life, when I was there, it was just the only place that everything felt okay. Everything felt right. I didn't, at that time, really know much, if anything, about Buddhism. I didn't know much, if anything, about meditation or all the fancy words all those Buddhist people say. But when I went there, something felt right. And on the surface, I would have looked at my life at that time and thought, well, my life is great, good job and success and blah, blah, blah. But everything was a disaster. And it would have continued that way and really just gotten worse if I hadn't stumbled into that temple. Now, I think that, we loved being in a temple so much, we decided to start our own. Some of that also selfishly on my part was like, well, I want to spend my life in a temple, so let's have our own place. But I say that because a lot of people come here, maybe you're here for the first time, maybe you've been coming for 10 years, maybe you're someone who kind of comes in and out over the years, whatever it might be. But if I have to look at like the most important piece of this whole journey for me was being patient and allowing whatever I felt that first time I went to that temple, time to just develop. Like I said, it wasn't some specific Dharma talk. It wasn't some teaching. It wasn't some person. It was just how I felt when I went there. And I had to be patient. Any of you have difficulty with being patient? A couple of you, 2, 3, right? Well, for me, patience was like, the word wasn't even in my vocabulary. It was impossible. But somehow I just knew that was where I needed to be. And so I stayed, and I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. And eventually something just drastically, slowly over time shifted, and I realized that I just couldn't live the life the way I was living it before, because that to me was like death. So I'm not really sure why I'm sharing this right now. It's just kind of on my mind, maybe to just reinforce that be patient with yourself. And again, as those of you who know me, I don't care if you come here or any other Buddhist place or meditation place or yoga center or whatever you go to, but if there are places that you go to where you feel at peace and calm and pleasant, go there a lot, as often as you can. For me at that time, I had to go almost every single day, literally like 7 days a week. Because that was the only place I really trusted myself. So that helped me, was just having faith that whatever path and journey I was on wasn't working. And the new path and journey I was on, I didn't quite understand it yet. But my options were, this sucks. This is unknown with great potential and upside. So I stayed with this path. So if that resonates with you, like I said, it's not about here, but just anywhere, follow that. Because the side that sucks, it's just not fun. It's really not. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin, especially for those who might be new. Nothing's going to happen to you. Okay, you're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You won't think nothing. Often people think meditation is about thinking nothing or going blank. You end up sitting there telling yourself, think nothing, think nothing, think nothing. And don't judge this. We judge things all day long, what we look like, what we wear, what we eat. We're constantly in judgment modes. So this practice is learning to abide in sensation of breath. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, mouth open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply going to continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Returning attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, practice of meditation. So recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands, or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external situation. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react, more stuff happens, more reactions. This is what we get every day. Practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. So all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. Meditation is not necessarily fun. It's not an escape. It's not closing your eyes and pretending you're sailing down a river and looking at all the birds and trees and flowers and thinking life is grand. Life is filled with chaos. Practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. So then you can eventually, hopefully, do something productive within the chaos. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And simply learning to be kind to yourself and every person you encounter, every moment of your life. Most of what you'll learn in Buddhist practice is everything you were already taught when you were probably 5 years old. Some of us just haven't done so well at integrating it into our lives yet. It's a good thing we're patient people. Learning to be kind, learning to be compassionate, learning to be forgiving, learning to live with generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. You've all heard those words, right? Like that is the heart of what's called the Bodhisattva practice. It's funny because one time somebody said to me, and I was doing a kind of a series of things, and I was going through what's called the 6 paramitas. And I think I'd introduced it once, and then all I talked about was generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom for 6 weeks. And because I didn't mix in any like Buddhist phrases, I didn't say any like Sanskrit or Pali words to make it sound like I knew what I was talking about. I just talked about generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. And then the person said to me, like, well, I wanted to learn about Buddhism. Like Like, that's it, folks. Those 6 words right there. The Bodhisattva practice. Bodhisattva is an enlightened being. It is the heart of the Mahayana school of Buddhism, where you go from a world of suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, also known as dukkha. See, I guess if I'd said dukkha, they might have thought I was talking about Buddhism, right? Into a world where you're free from all that. And then the Bodhisattva path is you get to the other side and you realize, wait a minute, there's a whole world of people that are suffering, so you turn around and go back. But the basis is those 6 things. And what I wanted to talk about briefly tonight, and then just kind of open up to questions, is in the Buddhist teachings, we look at what's called the middle path. And it's really about finding a balance in your life. You know, you think of a guitar string, if it's too tight, Al's not here tonight, so I don't get to have fun with Al. Many of you know Al. Guitar string is too tight. To my knowledge, if you try to play it, it breaks. If it's too loose, you don't get any sound. And so the middle path is kind of like that, trying to discover where's your balance. And that balance is different for everybody in this room. It's not like the Buddha said, this is the balance that you're looking for. The teachings are for you to explore, where are you living to an extreme where it's maybe unhealthy, where it's maybe creating a lot of conflict in your life, where it's really causing a lot of difficulty. And where can you find a balance, moving away from some of that? And then where in your life where you're maybe finding yourself being completely lazy, lethargic, just kind of not caring. And how can you maybe step that up a little bit? So the middle path, you can look at it from a lot of ways. You can look at it from just the way you express yourselves in your daily life. You can look at the middle path from a standpoint of how many pairs of shoes do you have versus how many pairs of shoes do you need? How many shirts do you have versus how many shirts do you need? How much food do you buy versus how much food do you need? Right? And if you find a balance with some of these things, if you have 30 pairs of shoes and you realize you could probably get through the rest of your life with just 10, that's 20 pairs of shoes you can give to somebody who has no shoes. You spend $30 on a meal and you decide you're just going to spend $15 from now on. That's $15 on a meal that you could buy someone else a meal or use the $15 for something else. Right? The amount of time we spend on things. If you like to watch Netflix for 12 hours, cut it down to 6, right? Find a balance with whatever you're doing in your life. And only you will know what are the things that you're doing and how are you spending your time and how are you spending your effort and how are you spending your money and where is there a balance? Because for most people, and again, I don't want to throw assumptions on anyone ever, but for most people, we tend to live our lives in ways that are not balanced, in often very unhealthy ways. Very extreme ways. I often use the metaphor of a roller coaster ride where often our lives are filled with these huge highs and then we come crashing down with these huge lows. And finding equanimity, finding balance is more about just having something a little stable, a little steady. The highs are great, right? We all love those, but the crashes suck. But you know what we do when we crash? We justify it by finding something that brings us to that high again. And we tell ourselves it's worth it. Just so we can come crashing down again. So balance is healthy. And again, every person in this room can play whatever in your head around these ideas because they'll mean different things to all of us. So my suggestion is to really explore how you live your lives and where balance fits in. Finding that middle path. And that's what the Buddha had to do. And that's the representation of the emaciated Buddha, where he starved himself and was nearly dead. He was living a very extreme life, living on 1 grain of rice a day. Also not recommended for anyone in this room. And he realized that that would have killed him. So he decided to eat and he regained physical health. strength. And then he spent the rest of his life eating 1 meal a day. Now, I'm not suggesting you eat 1 meal a day either, but what is your balance? What do you need to find a sense of health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in your life? So just things to explore on balance and finding the middle path. So there, I'll just stop, and much prefer, as always, to just open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind that I can address going forward. Yeah.
This is kind of a personal question for you and the people who helped you found Dharma Bums.
Yeah.
Different countries and cultures have different expressions of their ritual
Yes.
life. How did you guys decide what you wanted to keep, how you wanted to modify it, or did you?
We had probably all of 0 discussions around any of that. I don't even know what we've kept. I don't know what we've... The question, if you didn't hear it, was in the back. For those, she started by saying it might be a personal question, but for those, when we started Dharma Bums, for those of us who started it, what type of rituals, all cultures have different ritual practices. What rituals, what things did we decide to keep, and what did we decide to do away with? I don't know.
But you went up to the temple just north of us, right?
Yes.
And I presume it looked a little bit different than this, and
Yeah.
probably sounded a little bit different.
Yes. What I would say is that we've never had a dialogue around any of that. We've never discussed, and it's been 13 years now, what rituals are we going to do or not going to do. What I can say is we knew from the very beginning that, without getting into the longer story, is that we started Dharma Bum Temple to make it a very Western-friendly place to learn about Buddhist practice. So coming from a very Asian tradition around Buddhism, which to me I find very beautiful, a lot of bowing, a lot of chanting, a lot of ritual, things like that. We knew that we wanted to kind of pull that out because, as I've often joked before, if all of you walked in here and the moment you stepped inside this door, I handed you a big, long, black robe, and I walked you up front and I told you all how to bow to the Buddha and how to join your palms and how to say things in another language, most of you ain't coming back next week. A couple of you will, right? But we didn't start this place for a couple people. We started it for everybody. So there was just kind of this blanket decision that we're really just doing away with a lot of the cultural rituals and what I call the revolving door, where I saw these Western people come in and want to learn about Buddhism and then get turned off from those things. And not just the temple I went to. Most cultural temples are that way. They're very difficult for Westerners to feel comfortable, right? So there was no dialogue around what are we going to keep or what's going to go. We just knew we wanted it different. But what I'll say is that what's evolved over the last 13 years, and not because of a dialogue or conversation or a meeting, God forbid we should ever have a meeting about something around here, right? What's evolved out of that, we do actually have meetings, but rarely. What evolved out of that was each person who leads every night and every morning brings whatever they bring to the space. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this, that even when we bring hosts, when we host, Tibetan nuns or monks or, different Buddhist monks or nuns from traditions, they will come in and they will do different offerings. They will do different bows. They will do different chants. They will do different prostrations. All of them share whatever they bring into the space. And that to me is really what's most important, is make sure that whatever people bring into the space, it's important to them and they're comfortable with it, Yeah.
Thanks.
But when we have that meeting, I'll let you know.
Okay.
You can even be in it.
I asked because I think it was a brave thing to go into the temple up the street. Because I've been to the bookstore and I was scared to open the doors and see what was inside. Because I figured I wouldn't understand the words or the chants or anything.
Yeah. Fear's never really been my concern. Be fearless. When they bow, you bow. When they sit, you sit. When they stand, you stand. It's a wonderful practice. You are not allowed back here, Laverne, until you go and spend 6 months at that temple.
I like it.
Yeah, the culture, for those who don't know, like, to me, cultural Buddhist practice is so important and so beautiful, and I'm always encouraging people. There's, like, within 5 miles from here, no joke, there are probably 15 different, what I call cultural Buddhist temples. You have Thai Buddhism from Thailand, you have Lao Buddhism, you have Taiwanese Buddhism, you have Chinese Buddhism, you have Japanese Buddhism, you have Tibetan Buddhism. They're phenomenal, right? What happens often is, especially with what we do and kind of in this Western Buddhist world, is you get a bunch of Western people who sit around and they sit on these cushions and they meditate and they meditate and they meditate, and then they talk and they talk and they talk, and they think that's it. But for over 2,000 years, Buddhism has been doing all of those other things that I said everybody doesn't want to do. You know? So just because we created it this way also doesn't mean it's right. You know? But we felt that this was probably the best way to introduce it to people. And to then, I encourage all of you, go to these temples and see. They're not sitting around being like pleased, you know? They're not sitting around making sure fans are on and that you're comfortable, you know? They're not catering to you. They're not here to serve you. They're not here to please you. They're not here to heal you. They're not here to help you. They're not here to fix you. They're there to practice. And what they do is they recite Buddhist sutras, they meditate, they chant, and they follow rituals. What do we do? Something to think about. Do you come here to practice? Or do you come here to get? 2 different things. The root cause of suffering, the Buddha taught, is greed. If we go into a spiritual place week after week after week and all we think about is what am I going to get from this, you're missing the entire purpose. When I went into the temple, they gave me a hammer and told me to fix things. They gave me a mop and told me to clean. They gave me a rake and they told me to go sweep. You know? So don't think about what you get. And this isn't just about Buddhist practice, this is life. Don't think about what you get from life. Don't think about what you get from work, what you get from relationships, what you get from traffic. Don't think about what you get from Starbucks. Think about what you give. That's the first thing the Buddha said is the root cause to undo suffering. To give. Give time, give attention, give a heart, give a smile. You know? Give safety by putting shoes on a shoe rack. Safety to those in a wheelchair who might want to come in here, or those on a cane, or those on a walker, that if shoes on in a rack, they trip and fall and hurt themselves. Give. Come into places like this thinking with that mindset, and your life changes. That's what I was taught. That's how I was taught Buddhism. You know? Yeah, I see a hand. I just saw, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, without getting into specifics, like I've been doing more acts of kindness to people, and it's something I definitely enjoy doing.
Yeah.
It's just that it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. To a great level. So it's finding some type of balance, and I'm seeking that. Is there some guide as to find that balance?
You didn't come in late today, did you?
I did.
Huh?
Yes.
Did you? Did you hear everything I just said 10 minutes ago about balance?
Anything more specific on that?
Thanks for letting me mess with you a little bit. I was hoping to get a laugh out of you and, you know, not have you throw things at me. The first thing I'll say is, I mean, it's beautiful that, like you said, you're giving, you're helping, right? It's a beautiful practice. I don't know that I have a very specific answer for you other than just words of encouragement and advice that probably echo the same thing I said 10 minutes ago, which is you're aware it burning you out, and you're aware of it causing you, the danger often when one gives so much and they're not taking care of themselves is that they end up bitter, they end up resentful, they end up feeling like, just screw you, I'm done giving. And that's the downside, is that if you give so much and you don't take care of you, then everything falls to the ground. So, yes, also without getting into specifics, I suggest maybe alternate days, say starting on a Tuesday. So today's Tuesday, so tomorrow. So based on the fact that you're asking that question, my very specific direct advice, tomorrow, do not give or help anyone. I've never said that in the Dharma talk. Unless, of course, it's like safety or someone's going to die. Please help them, right? But tomorrow, just be like, what's your name? Jared. Just be like, tomorrow, you'll say, today is about Jared. I'm going to help Jared today. And find a balance with that, too. It doesn't mean to overindulge and destroy yourself. But tomorrow, take care of Jared. And see what that's like all day. You got to kind of refuel yourself. And then after Wednesday comes Thursday. And if you're feeling like you've taken care of yourself on Wednesday, then all right, today's Thursday, I'm going to go help people. I'm going to give to people. I'm going to do what I can to make the people around me, right, have a better situation, whatever that may be. And then when you notice yourself feeling exhausted, just stop. And then Friday, go back to Jared. How's that sound? You like the idea? I just made it up completely, so I'm glad you like it. Otherwise, I'd have to make up something else. Back and forth. Yeah, you know what I mean? You're looking for a way to balance it. We often balance things by days, by hours, by years. It's getting to that time where everybody's going to be starting about their new year stuff. Next year I'm going to do this, madness. One day at a time.
I think for myself, I'll feel it out which times where I can just stop.
Yes. What I heard you say was, for yourself, you'll feel it out each time. And I know I said that also, but here's the danger. You're clearly not that good at knowing when it's been too much. So I don't know if I would trust that. I'm just throwing this out there, stuff to think about. My suggestion is put a pretty hard line. If the day thing works, then just be like, today, done. If you survive Wednesday and you think I'm still okay, I'm going to give again on Thursday, don't do it. Because you might exceed your ability to give. And then you're of no use to anyone. That make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Other questions, thoughts? Yeah, balance is so important.
I think I'm conflating what I get, and I don't want to say get out of meditation now, but what I get out of it with being maybe more submissive. How are they different? I think it'd be communication, but especially when you're using meditation to help connect with family members, who maybe roughly with others. So how do you not turn it into just being submissive and being not reacting?
I mean, again, coming back to balance, it's a balance that so for me, my personal experience with meditation is I use meditation to bring me back to the present moment. Not to calm me, not to settle me, not to be okay with anyone, not to make sure my feathers don't get ruffled, but to bring me back to the present moment. And if the practice is used to bring you back to the present moment, you begin to recognize that all the ruffling of the feathers and all of the stories and all of the years of madness that you've told yourself about these family members that create that instant trigger, you're setting those stories down. You're just becoming present with, I'm just sitting, I'm just breathing. This is it. And then when you pick up the phone and call them, or you take 3 deep breaths in the car before you walk inside, or you take 3 deep breaths before you open the door for them to walk in, whatever that scenario might be, you've hopefully just settled all the stories. Because that story that you're telling yourself is what allows that trigger to be so quick. Of all the things that they've done in the past, of all the dynamics from the past, of all the pain or trauma or whatever it might be from the past, as soon as you engage with that person, you're carrying all of that. Meditation will not fix that. Meditation helps you become aware of the present moment, as I said, and appreciate, wow, I'm alive. I am breathing. I have an opportunity to engage with this person. But just engage with them as a person, not as the person that you've been telling yourself stories in your head for 20 plus years or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's I think shifting a little bit how you're using meditation. Because again, yes, the danger potentially is if you use meditation just kind of like, relax into this quiet, peaceful place and you don't care, that's not the purpose. The purpose is actually to really care about everything deeply. But very in a real way. Often, and not necessarily related to that, but often people who might be new to Buddhism think that Buddhist practice is just kind of like being the doormat, and that you don't care, that people just walk all over you. Like, no, that's not the practice. It's understanding your level of acceptance and your ability to be with certain things, and then understanding when it's healthier for you to turn and walk away. Again, a balance that only you will know. Yeah. You have family that bothers you, really?
No, asking my friend.
Yeah, asking for a friend. Well, I hope that helps your friend. Yeah. Other questions, thoughts, or anything before we wrap up? Time for one more. Yeah.
I think something very valuable I've been learning, I guess, is to not be so attached to my ideas, stories about my life in the world around me. But I guess something I've been wondering is what does it mean to make wise decisions? If you've gone through your life and you keep looking back and thinking wow, that was something I thought was really smart or wise of me, but that turned out to put me on a path that did not result in good things.
Yeah.
And understanding that if I'm wrong now, which I probably am about something, I wouldn't know that.
You're right.
And how you make
But you're not wrong, you're right.
But how you make decisions, always carrying an understanding that you're probably
wrong.
you're probably wrong about something.
All right, great question, as difficult as that was to ask. I think what you're asking is knowing that you're going to continue to learn and grow and mature and evolve and go through experiences, things that you're thinking might be wise right now may not actually be wise. And decisions you're making right now that you think are correct or right might not actually be correct or right. But you don't know that, right? Is that kind of the gist of your question?
Yeah.
Great. So I would agree completely that, in one way what you're asking for is a definition of wisdom. And I'll make this easy. I talk about this a lot. You've probably heard me say this, that I don't look at defining wisdom as helpful. The Buddha praised Subhuti, his one of his disciples who he considered the wisest of his disciples, and he asked Subhuti to give a talk on emptiness one day, which to me is basically the wisdom teachings. And Subhuti said nothing. And the Buddha praised him and said, great talk, right? Because he said nothing about wisdom. So from that teaching, what I've learned over the years is instead of looking at what is ultimate wisdom, I try to look at what is the ignorance, the causes of suffering, the second noble truth, greed, anger, ignorance. We overcome greed with generosity. We overcome anger with compassion. We overcome ignorance with wisdom. So again, recognize your ignorance, but that's also not it's really the same question. You don't know when you're being wise, which also means you don't know when you're being ignorant, right? So the ultimate, to me, practice comes down to what is your intention? That's all we got. We don't know. We've all probably done things in our lives that we thought were like the smartest, wisest, well thought out, well planned out decision, and it turned into an absolute nightmare and hurt people. And then the complete opposite, right? A mess filled with anger and rage and whatever, and it turned out great. So we don't know. To me, the practice is, what is your intention? In everything you choose to say, every place you choose to go, every person you interact with, is your intention filled with kindness, compassion? This is where you insert all those key buzzwords in Buddhism, or is it filled with greed, anger? Usually we know those things. And is your intention really all about you? Is it partially about you, or is it not at all about you? Is your intention pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? I think some exploration into the intention is, in some cases, the best we can do. Right? One of my favorite Buddhist expressions is, the unenlightened mind cannot comprehend enlightened teachings. So here we look at this body of teachings that the Buddha said 2,500 years ago. People called him the Buddha, which just means awakened. They gave him the name, the awakened one, right? They decided he was this fully enlightened being, and then he spoke for 45 years. And yet here we are as a bunch of unenlightened people trying to comprehend that. Can you speak German? No, it was a guess. Maybe you'd said yes, that would have been funny. So it's kind of like if people started speaking German to you, you'd be completely lost, right? It's kind of like reading the Dharma sometimes. It sounds really good. But how many of you are going to walk out here and be perfectly nice and kind to every person you encounter the rest of the night? Maybe if you go to your mode of transportation and go to sleep immediately. So come back to intention. Why am I doing it? What's it for? What's the reason? And then karma occurs, or in a modern expression, let the chips fall as they may. But they're hopefully chips of kindness. So I'll close with that. We'll join palms. The benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. May they be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.